If you found out that your significant other was cheating on you, would you give her any chance of reconciliation? This is a rather difficult question because on the one hand, the feeling of love for a person, and on the other, cold-blooded betrayal. I found myself in such a situation by coincidence, and that's what came of it. It all unfolded at the onset of our annual men's fishing weekend. Scott, Stan, Roger, and I set out for our 3-day fishing excursion by the lake, while our wives indulged in their own girls' weekend. Having been acquainted for many years, Roger and Mary were our dearest friends. Stan Fortunato, Roger's nephew, joined our group despite being several years younger. Over time, he seamlessly integrated into our circle and evolved into one of my most valuable employees. When Laura and I tied the knot as high school graduates, I was driven and hardworking. Shortly after graduation, I launched a small pool service business that within 2 years expanded to cater to over 100 homes with the assistance of 4 employees. The business continued to thrive, and 2 decades later, I managed over 1,500 homes with a team of 30 dedicated employees, including the indispensable Stan, who had proven to be a remarkable asset. Despite lacking a college education or prior experience, Stan's passion, unwavering work ethic, and excellent rapport with the team made him an outstanding manager for our Orlando operations. Recognizing his exceptional contributions, I promoted him, offering a substantial pay increase and the potential for future ownership in the company. Our professional ties blossomed into a genuine friendship, and we found joy in working together. As the years passed, I expanded the business from Tampa to Orlando, establishing it as the premier pool service company in Central Florida. With a high demand for our services due to the prevalence of pool-equipped homes requiring constant care and maintenance, our revenue and profits skyrocketed, solidifying the company's position in the market. As the business expanded, the significance of financial management became apparent. I turned to Howard, a reliable and experienced family member, retired as a tax accountant with extensive knowledge in finance. Following his guidance, I utilized the equity in my home to grow the business during a period of exceptionally low mortgage rates. My confidence in Howard attested to his expertise and commitment. Together with his attorney spouse, they played a crucial role in our success by offering invaluable advice and recommendations that proved pivotal to the company's prosperity. Beth, Howard's wife and a corporate attorney, proposed placing the company into a trust to shield assets from liabilities and potential lawsuits in the future. I heeded her advice and became the sole trustee. The pleasures of married life and the pursuit of a dream home. My wife, Laura, and her group of friends absolutely loved our new estate. Picture this, an upscale neighborhood with a spacious swimming pool, a large patio featuring a delightful tiki bar, and a grilling area that would excite any BBQ enthusiast. And let's not forget all the luxurious amenities Laura insisted on having. She had a knack for getting what she wanted, and I could never resist her persuasive charm. Homes in our exclusive neighborhood were appreciating rapidly like shooting stars. So naturally, I indulged every upgrade whim of Laura's, knowing that when the time came to sell, we would be in for a lucrative return. Love has a way of leading us to unexpected decisions. All for the greater good, right? Today is the big day. Laura and her group of close friends have arrived at our luxurious home for a weekend of pure indulgence. Upon their arrival, I was given strict instructions not to interrupt their playful activities. They were determined to have a great time without us husbands, and gladly I complied. I was more than eager to escape the realm of girl talk and gossip for the weekend. Armed with fishing rods and a heart full of freedom, I swiftly left the scene, as if chased by a pack of enthusiastic puppies. A fishing trip seemed like paradise after weeks of tirelessly managing my growing company. The idea of catching some big fish and enjoying a cold beverage with the guys was sheer bliss. As I left the ladies to their wine-filled afternoon of laughter and secrets, I couldn't help but reflect on how fortunate I was to have Laura and her group of mischief makers in my life. Sure, they might drive us husbands crazy at times, but deep down, we knew they added spice to our otherwise ordinary days. A smile played on my lips as I headed over to Roger's house, fully aware that the weekend's adventures were just beginning. We had carefully planned our lake trip, intending to depart at 6 p.m. and reach our destination by 9 p.m. The 3-day excursion promised an exciting time filled with fishing and camaraderie. While gathering our gear and loading up the car, it suddenly dawned on me that I had forgotten my special fishing lure, a project I had been diligently working on in my workshop for the past week. For me, fishing wasn't just a hobby, it was a passion. I took immense pride in creating my fishing lures and tackle combinations, convinced that the right equipment could make all the difference in a successful catch. This particular lure, crafted with love, held special significance. It was customized to attract the largest fish and bring me joy on the water. Realizing the impact of having the perfect lure, I couldn't imagine going on the trip without it. So I informed my fellow fishing buddies that I needed to retrieve my prized lure before we set off on our adventure. They chuckled good-naturedly, understanding my commitment to the sport. At 5 p.m., I hopped into my car and drove the brief 7 minutes back to my house. I parked among the other cars, walked to the side door, and stealthily made my way down to the workshop. I wanted to avoid disturbing the ladies or risking a scolding for returning home early. Attempting to be discreet, I approached the workbench and noticed the women's lively chatter. I chuckled when I realized they were already in high spirits, giggling and enjoying themselves in the shade next to the tiki hut on the side of my house. The workbench was conveniently located just below the outside window, allowing me to eavesdrop on their conversation. I'd not one to eavesdrop and generally couldn't care less about their discussion. However, my interest piqued when I overheard my wife talking about me in bed. For some reason, I decided to record that part of the conversation on my iPhone, thinking it would be a playful tease when I returned. Little did I know those next few minutes would disrupt my fishing trip and turn my world upside down. It turns out I had stumbled into the midst of a candid gossip session. The ladies were holding nothing back, and I couldn't help but chuckle at their frankness. They seemed to be delving into the not-so-private details of their love lives, and the conversation was heating up. Laura, with her mischievous laugh, openly shared details about her relationship with me, her husband. I heard her praising my skills with my tongue and expressing satisfaction after all these years. I couldn't help but think, "You go, Laura. Boast about your impressive husband." She continued, "But it's true what they say. After years of marriage, things might not be as wild as they once were. But hey, it happens to the best of us." However, unexpectedly, one of the girls threw a $1 million question into the mix. "Is that the reason you were involved with Stan?" My attention sharpened, and I leaned in, intrigued to witness Laura's reaction to this bombshell. The girls were fully in detective mode, attempting to piece together to witness Laura's reaction to this bombshell. The girls were fully in detective mode, attempting to piece together the puzzle of Laura's recent adventures. If Laura's openness was any indication, I sensed that this conversation was about to take a compelling turn. The suspense was palpable, and a hint of intrigue lingered in the air as the girls awaited Laura's response. Oh no, my heart skipped a beat, and I couldn't believe what I had just heard. Did I hear correctly? Did Laura admit to doing something with Stan? Or Stan? Panic and disbelief overwhelmed me like a tidal wave, prompting me to lean in even further, desperate to catch every word. My mind raced, attempting to process this shocking revelation. Stan, whom I trusted and considered a friend, had been entangled in something with my wife. It felt like the ground beneath me was crumbling, and I struggled to control my emotions. Each word they spoke felt like a dagger to my heart. The once joyous giggles and laughter now resonated as a cruel symphony of betrayal. My hands trembled as I clutched the phone, my heart pounding, and tears threatening to spill from my eyes. As I continued to eavesdrop on this gut-wrenching conversation, I felt like a helpless bystander in my own life. The shock and hurt were almost unbearable, and I fervently wished I could rewind time and erase those words from existence. In that moment, the harsh reality struck me like a heavy blow. The confidence I had placed in both Laura and Stan had crumbled into countless fragments. I felt disoriented, betrayed, and completely shattered. The pain was excruciating, leaving me in a state of profound loss and devastation. As I listened to the unfolding conversation, it dawned on me that my life would undergo an irreversible transformation. The once present innocence and joy in our home would now be replaced by heartache and despair. And joy in our home would now be replaced by heartache and despair. No, Bob and I have a satisfying sex life. He has always fulfilled me in that aspect. I'd love him, and I would never intentionally get involved with Stan. It just happened. Come on, Laura, you cheated on Bob. You can't be that content in your marriage. No, you don't understand. My love for Bob is everything. He's not just my partner, he's my sanctuary, my solace, my heart, and my safe haven. Yes, he satisfies me. This foolish mistake with Stan was just a momentary lapse. But you mentioned that Stan was a great lover, so we assume you had a physical relationship with him. We're confused. Give us the whole story. Girls, whatever I share with you must stay between us. The guys would harm Stan, and my husband would leave me if he discovered this. I would never want to hurt him that way. He's such a kind man, but he wouldn't understand. Can you promise to keep this strictly confidential among us girls? I didn't catch any audible confirmation, but I presume they all nodded in agreement. Okay, you can't share any of this. But after Susan broke up with Stan last month, he was devastated. The news completely blindsided him. He was actually planning to propose to her. That day when I'd met him at the restaurant, we sat together and he confided in me, sharing the whole story. He cried, you know. This tough guy, in tears, and my heart went out to him. I felt so sorry for him that I stayed with him until he composed himself. He was so down and troubled that I almost felt a maternal instinct to comfort him. Yes, you're old enough to be his mother. Spare us, Laura. You had a romantic need to comfort him, not a motherly one. Well, turns out you're right, but at that moment, sex wasn't on my mind. Anyway, he walked me to my car and thanked me for being a good friend and letting him share his feelings. I just smiled and gave him a friendly kiss. That's when things got interesting. Before I could step back, he pulled me in and gave me the most passionate kiss I can recall. It's been ages since Bob kissed me like that, and that kiss made my knees go weak. When I heard her words, I experienced severe pain and a rapid beating in my chest. I trembled, unsure if this reaction was caused by anger or fear of what she might say next. Breaking off the kiss without saying a word, he gently took my hand and led me to his truck, parked a few rows away from us, under a shady tree. I can't explain why I allowed it, but I felt like I was bewitched. Despite everything, we sat in the back of his truck for the next few minutes, exchanging kisses reminiscent of high school sweethearts. It was at this time that he confessed that he found me irresistibly attractive and harbored fantasies of being with me. I must admit, I was stunned and blushed at his compliments, but I can't justify my subsequent actions. When he put my hand on him, and I felt something substantial under his jeans immense. I mean, it was his instrument. I must admit that during that time I didn't consider Bob or our family at all. Almost as if in a trance, I unfastened his belt and lowered his pants, revealing his manhood, which was surprisingly impressive. While Bob is adequately endowed, this was on a whole other level, like something out of a porn scene. I can't quite explain it, but an irresistible urge came over me to taste it. The next 5 minutes consisted of me giving him one of my best performances, culminating in him expressing gratitude for the relief after whatever he had been going through. Mary then asked amid giggles, "Did you swallow or spit?" Oh, I swallowed every last bit, and he tasted amazing. Despite what I've said before about not swallowing Bob's and how much I disliked it, I can't explain why I felt the need to swallow Stan's, but I did, and I enjoyed it. Hearing those words was like a hot knife slicing through my heart. The pain penetrated every cell in my body, and I found myself shivering with a profound sense of loss. Mary, Roger's wife, commented, "Wow, that's intense. We had no idea you had that side to you. Nor did I. I'd never contemplated anything like that before. It just happened." At that point, Emily, Scott's wife, added, "I think all us girls fantasize about that, but it never becomes a reality. Good for you. I'm so envious. Now spill the details on what happened next." From Laura's tone, It was evident that she acknowledged the wrongdoing and was burdened with a profound sense of remorse for crossing a boundary she should never have crossed. After regaining my composure and realizing the gravity of my actions, guilt overwhelmed me. I was aware that what I did was wrong, and understanding that Bob would never comprehend it, I vowed to ensure it never occurred again. I explicitly told Stan that our involvement was a one-time occurrence and that we must never repeat it. I also emphasized that Bob was his friend, and if he discovered the truth, both of us would betray him. Stan agreed, attributing the incident to a fleeting moment of passion and promising to keep it a secret forever. As I stood there, torn between shock and pain, Laura's admission echoed in my mind, and Mary's words delivered the final blow, extinguishing any remaining hope. This shattered my illusions, leaving me utterly lost and devastated. So how did you end up in bed with Stan and turn your husband into a cuckold? Hearing this question reduced me to a broken man, humiliated and lost, harboring a desire to confront both Stan and my unfaithful wife. Laura hesitated before explaining how Stan had sought solace from her in a moment of despair. The brief ecstasy was overshadowed by the realization of betrayal and the depth of the pain she had caused. Her words, tinged with sadness, revealed intimate details shared with Stan. In a solemn tone, she expressed, "No, please don't misunderstand. Bob is not someone who would allow such things. I made another regrettable mistake. I messed up badly and should have been more careful. Stan invited me to lunch because he was feeling down and needed someone to talk to. He believed I was the only one who understood what he was going through. Despite my initial refusal, I eventually went to his house alone when he insisted he prepare lunch for us and just talk for an hour. During our conversation over salads and wine, he confessed how moved he was by our previous encounter. As he took our dishes to the sink, he kissed me again, this time with a passionate intensity that one only dreams about. To cut a long story short, we spent the entire afternoon in his bed. It wasn't romantic. It was just a physical connection. I knew it was wrong, but it happened. Honestly, it was the most satisfying experience I've had in years. Ladies, I've never felt anything so intense and fulfilling before. Stan hadn't had sex in a while, and he was quite passionate. When he climaxed inside me for the first time, it was more than I expected. I came so hard and loud that I was convinced the neighbors could hear us. Despite the incredible few hours we shared, we both knew it couldn't happen again. After I showered and got dressed, I made it clear to him that this was a one-time thing, and he shouldn't contact me. I praised him as a wonderful man and encouraged him to find someone his own age to love. As much as I enjoyed the experience, I couldn't risk my marriage. We both agreed, and that marked the end of it. So you haven't been with him again? Just those 2 times? As fury surged through my veins, I tightly clenched my fists, attempting to restrain the whirlwind of emotions within me. The disclosure of Laura's past encounter with Stan felt like a painful blow to the heart, and the raw agony escalated with every word she spoke. Discovering that she had allowed another man to ejaculate inside her dealt another blow to my masculinity and self-esteem. My world was collapsing and my familiar life seemed to be coming to an end. The term cuck reverberated in my mind, a hurtful label I never imagined would be associated with my marriage. While anger surged, there was also a desperate longing to salvage whatever remained of our relationship. I didn't want to lose her, but I couldn't bear the weight of the betrayal either. My mind raced, grappling with conflicting emotions. Hurt and anger intertwined with a sense of helplessness, leaving me feeling adrift and exposed. How could she do this? How could she betray our trust in such a manner? Just as I sought a glimmer of hope, Laura's next comment struck me like a heavy blow. It felt as if she had poured salt into an already open wound. Her words tore at my heart, amplifying my anger and disbelief. I know it was wrong, but as I mentioned, it just happened. In that moment, anger reached its pinnacle. How could she casually dismiss her actions as if they were uncontrollable impulses? Anger surged again as I heard my wife trivializing her infidelity. I felt a profound sense of indignation, a betrayal that transcended the physical act. She willingly jeopardized our marriage for a fleeting moment of pleasure. The room seemed to close in on me as anger swelled, and I grappled to process it all. I wanted to scream to lash out, but I knew it wouldn't solve anything. All. I wanted to scream to lash out, but I knew it wouldn't solve anything. The pain was overwhelming, and a crushing weight settled on my chest. At that moment, I realized that I couldn't immediately make sense of it all. Then, as she spoke again, I listened intently for any glimmer of hope for our future together. In her words, her voice trembled with emotion. Laura acknowledged the guilt she carried but admitted that she couldn't help but reminisce about the intense passion she shared with Stan. She described how those memories had become a secret refuge she sought when making love to me. I can never go back. What remains are cherished memories. It's difficult to confess, but during intimate moments with Bob, I find myself relying on those recollections. I know it's wrong, but I can't help but recall the sensations of Stan's presence. His impact on me is unforgettable. The intense orgasms he provided are unmatched. Now those memories are all I possess. Bob will never realize that it's not his presence bringing me pleasure. Despite the guilt, I can't shake off thoughts of Stan. Laura's confession carried a mix of emotions. Her words reflected a deep yearning as she accepted that the memories with Stan were etched into her being, an indelible part of her. Emily, in response to Laura's revelation, broke her silence. Laura, I admit my envy. I love Scott, but the allure of a well-endowed man like Stan is hard to ignore. Please keep this between us, but Scott is on the smaller side. I cherish him, but the curiosity to experience a bigger size is there, even if just once. I overheard Mary emit a soft moan, suggesting that the story was arousing her. That's unbelievable. And poor Bob is clueless. He has no inkling about Stan, or that you fantasize about him during intimate moments. Wow, Laura, that's so morally wrong. But you really need to get your thoughts straight and put Stan out of your mind. Bob isn't a fool, and you might slip up and hurt him. Don't fret about Bob. I ensure he's well taken care of. And believe me, he'll never find out about this, and I promise I won't repeat it. It was a mistake, and living with this guilt has been tough. Honestly, sharing the whole story with someone, especially with the help of some wine, is helping me. My future was now at risk as the girls laughed and indulged in their conversation at my expense. I was the one who bought the large house, paid the bills, and allowed my wife to live a luxurious life without working. Spa, country club, shopping. A new big house with a pool for her entertainment and a housekeeper, all funded by me. The knave husband. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. Laura's confession had shocked me, leaving me in a state of disbelief, and tears rolled down my face, revealing the depth of my pain. Time seemed to blur as I listened to the conversation, unable to tear myself away from the painful truth. I knew I had to leave, to distance myself from the situation, at least for now. With a heavy heart, I picked up my fishing lure and the bottle of Amontillado sherry I had bought for the guys, then returned to Roger's house. The guys were waiting for my return, oblivious to the turmoil within me. Tears continued to flow as I drove, my mind filled with confusion and hurt. I needed time to process everything, to come to terms with the betrayal I had just discovered. I wasn't ready to face Laura, to confront her about what I had learned. The pain was too raw, too overwhelming. I had initially intended to follow through with the original plan, escaping for the weekend to find solace in a place where I could be alone with my thoughts. However, fate seemed to have a dark sense of humor when I realized that I would be spending those days with Stan, the very person involved in the heartbreaking affair. The thought of being in his company only intensified my distress. Uncertainty loomed as I wondered what to expect. Could I manage to control my emotions? Would I face him without succumbing to the urge to lash out or revealing the internal devastation I was experiencing? As I drove back to Roger's house, tears continued to stream down my face, and a deep sense of loss and pain enveloped me. The upcoming weekend appeared ominous, casting a shadow of uncertainty over how I would navigate through it. All I was certain of was my need for time to heal and to find a way to reconcile with the shattered pieces of my heart. In that moment, I felt profoundly isolated, grappling with the betrayal of someone I had loved and trusted. The overwhelming sadness in my heart left me praying that somehow, someday, I would discover a path to mend the fractured pieces of my soul. When I arrived, Roger was outside loading his Escalade. As I approached, he sensed something was amiss, noticing the glassiness in my eyes. I wasn't ready to share, but when he inquired about what was wrong, I managed to come up with a plausible response. "Bob, what's going on? You look awful. Is everything okay?" "Sorry, Roger. I feel a migraine coming on, and I just need to take a break for a while." "Are you sure? You look really unwell." "Yeah, I'm accustomed to dealing with this. Just let me sit in the front during the ride, close my eyes, and I'll be fine. I can't miss our annual trip. I need the getaway." "Of course, no problem. Why don't you go inside and relax while we finish packing? We'll be ready to leave in about 30 minutes. I'll come get you when we're set." True to his word, 30 minutes later, I was in the front seat, and Roger took care of me. He handed me his wife's sleeping eye cover and a pair of his noise-canceling headphones as I sat in the passenger seat, with Stan and Scott in the back. With the blindfold and headphones, I found myself in a dark space. My sensory perception, now limited to smell, touch, and taste, allowed me to reflect on this unexpected situation. The guys understood my need for silence and offered assistance if required. I avoided looking at Stan, keeping my eyes shut and expressing gratitude for their understanding. Over the next 3 hours, still in that dark space, I sat in peace contemplating the emotional wreckage I had just witnessed. Recollections of our years together, my admiration for Laura, and the joy of raising Michael and Katie, our wonderful children, flooded my mind. The mental images of Laura with Stan haunted my thoughts. The more I tried to suppress them, the more vividly I saw her with him. She insisted it was a one-time mistake and felt remorseful, promising it would never happen again. I wanted to find a way to forgive her and move past it, but what truly devastated me was recalling her admission of thinking about Stan during our intimacy and fantasizing about her orgasms with him. As a man, I couldn't fathom overcoming that. Unfortunately, I believe that confession marked the end of our marriage. I reflected on the joyful moments our family had shared and contemplated the possibility that those times might be gone. Unseen tears welled up, and I hastily wiped them away. It was the first time I could recall feeling so lost and troubled. Without answers or ideas, I must have drifted into sleep, as my next memory was Roger shaking me awake at the fishing cabin. "Dude, are you okay? How are you feeling?" he inquired. Over the following 2 days, I remained unusually silent, citing a migraine as an excuse. The guys respected my need for solitude, attempting not to disrupt Scott and Roger's trip. Wrestling with my emotions, I examined my past and future, a challenging process that I was determined to endure. Still uncertain 2 days later, I found myself alone with Stan on a path to the lake. Roger and Scott were due to meet us at the boat dock. As I trailed behind Stan through the woods, Laura's words echoed in my mind, and suddenly rage consumed me. Spotting a sizable fallen branch, akin to a large baseball bat, I instinctively grabbed it. Feeling its weight in my hands, I looked at Stan about 20 paces ahead and impulsively charged forward. I aimed for his head, but altered my course at the last moment, shattering his collarbone. Stan fell to the ground in agonizing pain. Standing over him, I confronted the man who had betrayed me. He clutched his injured shoulder as I yelled, "That's for betraying my wife." With all my strength, I kicked him between his legs, watching him writhe in pain until he blacked out. Moments later, I regained my strength. I kicked him between his legs, watching him writhe in pain until he blacked out. Moments later, I regained my senses, moved Stan to a tree, and propped him up as he recovered. When he finally regained consciousness, he muttered, "What the hell?" "Listen, I know everything about you and Laura, and right now you're fortunate to be alive. Man, I'm sorry. It just happened." Bob's face flushed with anger. "Be quiet. You were involved with her, and that's the end of it. Don't speak to me for the rest of the trip, and don't mention a word to Laura. If you do, I promise you'll regret it. I'm not sure what I'll do with her, but I don't need your interference. You've already ruined my 20-year marriage. Don't mess up my revenge as well." Bob, she loves you. Divorcing her isn't the solution. It's my fault, and I apologize. Take it out on me, not her. I was vulnerable after Susan left, and Laura was there for me. It just happened, and she regretted it after I pressured her. You can't divorce her. She loves you. I kicked him in the groin again. I told you to be quiet. Roger and Scott witnessed me kicking him and rushed over to pull me away. Bob, what's happening? Why are you doing this? Stan, nursing his pain, stayed quiet. Roger assisted Stan in getting up, and we returned to the cabin. Stan complained about my attack, claiming it was unfair. I glared at him, told him to be quiet, and then played the recording for everyone to hear. After the recording concluded, Roger unleashed his fury on his nephew, exclaiming, "You treacherous traitor! You betrayed our friend, the man who gave you a job when you were in dire straits and took you into his confidence. You engaged in an affair with one of our wives and had the audacity to join us on this trip. And now you're upset that Bob has hurt you? You should be grateful we didn't leave you stranded in the middle of the lake. We don't want to see or hear from you for the rest of this trip. No words at all. Consider yourself lucky to be alive." Scott chimed in. "Guys, there's another issue with this recording. You heard what my wife and Mary said, how excited they were about Laura's cheating, keeping it a secret. Personally, I have a problem with that. When I return, Emily and I will be having a serious conversation. Yeah, Scott's got a point. That was unacceptable and disrespectful to all of us." Addressing Stan with a menacing glare, he continued, "Look at what you've done, you idiot. You've ruined one marriage and potentially two others. Maybe we should toss you into the middle of the lake." Stan cast his gaze downward, finally comprehending the magnitude of his colossal mistake, and remained silent. Bob expressed, "I agree that they're all implicated, but please give me a few days before taking any action. I'll provide you with a copy of the recording, but I need to confront Laura before she learns what I've discovered. Thanks to this person, I don't think I can continue my relationship with her. Every time we're intimate now, I'll be aware that she's thinking about him. I can't be with her knowing that, and I'm likely going to end up divorcing her. I just need a few days to sort things out." Roger turned to his nephew and stated, "Stan, you've behaved poorly. You're not allowed to speak to Laura or the other wives without our approval. If you tip off Laura about what's coming, we'll make your life miserable. Frankly, if you disappeared right now, none of us would be upset. You're family, and that's the only reason I haven't confronted you physically and left you in those woods. You've harmed our friend and a decent man. Just because you couldn't maintain your own relationship, you go after another man's wife. You're disgraceful, and it's shameful to admit you're my sister's child. Not a word. Do you understand, jerk?" Stan nodded in acknowledgement. No one spoke to him for the entire trip, and to his credit, he kept to himself, avoiding any conflict. I needed to figure out my next steps with Laura. As we drove back home, I mulled over the situation, considering how Laura might have reacted if our roles were reversed. Suddenly, a plan formed in my mind. Despite my deep love for Laura and the possibility of moving past the one-time encounter with Stan, the idea of her fantasizing about him during our intimate moments was too much to bear. I made the decision to let Laura determine her own fate. The plan involved discussing the idea of an affair, leading her to believe that I was the one who had been unfaithful. I wanted to gauge her reaction and observe her subsequent actions. If she could forgive a one-time lapse in my judgment, then I would reciprocate and work towards resolving our issues. Whatever her response, I vowed to mirror it in how I treated her and our marriage. The resolution to her infidelity would rest in her hands. As I returned home and pulled into the driveway, my stomach churned and anger resurfaced. I was in a dark place, but it was time to confront Laura. I needed to suppress my emotions and act normally, which would prove to be one of the most challenging tasks I'd ever faced. Upon entering the house, I received a warm welcome. Laura, dressed elegantly, embraced me with a big hug and a welcoming kiss. I realized I would miss these moments if she chose a different path. Despite my lingering anger, I still loved her. The sense of her perfume and the delightful dinner she had prepared helped ease my tension. We enjoyed an excellent dinner, And remarkably, I remained pleasant while listening to her recount the events of the past few days. It was still relatively early when she led me to the bedroom, expressing how much she missed me and needed extra affection. Clearly, she was in the mood for intimacy. I smiled, knowing that the course of our future was about to be determined. Laura wasted no time and swiftly removed my pants moments after we landed on the bed. Positioned on her knees, she began pleasuring my shaft until it stiffened, delivering an expert, sensually wet blowjob that left me fully aroused. Attempting to climax during the act, I aimed to avoid being intimate with her, aware that she might be thinking of Stan. I realized this was an image that would haunt every future intimate moment between us. Sensing my nearing climax, she halted her actions on my member. In an instant, she lay naked on the bed, pulling me on top of her. Despite my strong desire to engage in intercourse, her words about fantasizing about Stan's anatomy while we made love echoed in my mind. For the first time in our relationship, my arousal waned, and I couldn't penetrate her. Laura looked up at me in astonishment, seemingly hurt by my lack of enthusiasm. "Baby, what's wrong? Don't you want to make love to me?" It was the moment of truth. My phone, strategically placed on the night table, was recording the audio to avoid any misunderstandings in our conversation. "Laura, there's something I need to confess. There's someone else, and I feel terrible that I can't perform." Shocked, she gazed up at me and questioned, "What do you mean someone else?" "I'm sorry, it's only happened a few times, but the intimacy is so intense that I can't get it out of my mind." As predicted, her Latin temper flared. "You traitor! You were with someone else, and you can't stop thinking about it. Baby, it was just a physical thing. I still love you," I carefully stated, avoiding explicit admission of my involvement. "I can't believe this." "What do you mean you can't stop thinking about it?" To be honest, the orgasms were incredible, and I can't shake the memories of those amazing moments, which is why I can't get aroused. Choosing my words carefully, I mirrored her own from the recording. She cried, clearly devastated by the perceived betrayal. Was I being callous? Perhaps, but in reality, I saw myself as the victim, not her. I allowed her to express herself. In an enraged tone, she shouted, "Well, damn you. Pack your things and leave. I won't be married to a cheater. My dad cheated on my mom," leaving her shattered. "I won't let you do that to me. Get out. I'll divorce you and make you pay for this. I've been a devoted wife, raised our 2 children, managed the household, cooked for you, and treated you with love. Is this how you repay me?" I could hardly contain my amusement at her demeanor and remarks. In a few minutes, she won't find this amusing at all. "Laura, it was just a physical encounter, and it happened only twice. Come on, it was a one-time thing. Are you absolutely certain you want a divorce over this? Listen to me. Just sex. Are you joking? I don't believe you, and how can I be sure there aren't others? I can't trust you, and yes, I want a divorce, and you're going to pay a steep price for this. You're aware that our state recently enacted a new law favoring the wronged party in cases of adultery, right? I'm divorcing you under that statute and taking everything you have. Heck, I might even take over your business and keep you on as one of the pool boys, you jerk. Wow, I didn't expect you to be so cold and heartless. As I mentioned, there was no love involved. It was just physical and only those 2 times. Is this really what you want? Are you sure there's no room for forgiveness? Perhaps we can seek counseling?" I attempted to salvage the marriage, but she was unknowingly sealing its fate. "No, we're finished. I won't stay married to a cheater. Just pack some clothes and leave. Stay with Roger or get a hotel room. But I don't want to see you again. You'll hear from my lawyer." I couldn't help but smile. She had no clue that she had just played into her own downfall. With venom in her voice, she shouted, "Why are you smirking, jerk?" "Well, sweetheart, you just made my decision a lot easier." "What do you mean, your decision?" she asked. "Allow me to show you something. Get dressed and come with me." She was still furious but followed me down to my workshop. I had her stand next to the same window where I had recorded the conversation. Instructing her to stay there without moving, I went outside and connected the Bluetooth speaker to my iPhone. Upon returning to the workshop, she was still angry, but now looked bewildered as I stood beside her and pressed play on the phone. My wife caught an infidelity on the phone. My wife caught an infidelity, became even more bewildered upon hearing her own words. Despite her confusion, she continued to listen, and her expression shifted from confusion to shock. As the entire conversation unfolded, she succumbed to tears, collapsing to her knees. The weight of realization hit her with force. "Baby, I'm so sorry. How did you hear that?" she sobbed. "Well, I'm not exactly sure why that matters, but I had to return for some items I forgot to pack. I didn't want to disturb you and your friends, so I used the back door to avoid the gathering. That's when I overheard you discussing me in bed. I recorded it with the intention of tasing you about it later. However, when you admitted to your affair with Stan, I stayed and recorded the interior conversation. Darling, you heard me say it was a one-time thing, just sex. There's nothing meaningful between us. Please forgive me. I'm so sorry you had to find out this way." Amidst our shared tears and heartache, Laura's regretful words cut through the pain. Her voice shook with genuine sorrow and remorse as she sought my forgiveness, exposing her vulnerability. Her plea for understanding washed over me, and I realized that beneath the layers of hurt and anger, there still existed a profound love. However, her tears and pleas did not sway my decision. My tone was icy and distant as I confronted Laura with a painful truth. The emotional injury cut deep, and the sense of betrayal overwhelmed me. The words she uttered about dreaming of Stan during our intimate moments shattered the last fragments of truce between us. "I heard everything, Laura," I responded, my voice lacking any warmth. "You're correct. You omitted the part where you admitted to dreaming of him while you and I were intimacy. How do you expect me to just overlook that?" For the first time in our marriage, her tears seemed ineffective, as the pain from her words lingered heavily in my heart. The image of her dreaming of another man while I poured my love and soul into our moments together was unbearable. "I can't overlook that, Laura," I continued, my voice filled with bitterness. "I also can't overlook the fact that you were never going to tell me, keeping me in the dark while you and all your friends would look at me knowing I was your cuck. You shattered something inside me, and I don't know if I can ever trust you again. How can I believe that you truly love me when you're dreaming of someone else?" My anger intensified, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I deserved better than this. Being with someone who couldn't fully commit to me was the last straw. "I can't just pretend that everything's okay," I declared, my voice firm. "Dreaming of another man while we're together is a deal breaker for me. I don't know how to love you again when I know that you're thinking of him, not me, during our most intimate moments." The pain in my heart was overwhelming, and the idea of rebuilding our relationship felt insurmountable. I couldn't find it in myself to forgive her, especially after such a profound betrayal. The room fell silent as the weight of my words hung heavily in the air. There was nothing left to say. The truth had been spoken, and the hurt was too deep to mend. It was evident that the damage done was irreparable, and the road to forgiveness was one I couldn't envision traveling. At that moment, I realized that our love had been irreparably broken, and the future we once imagined together was now just a distant fantasy. It was a painful acknowledgement, but one I had to confront in order to find a path to healing and moving forward, even if it meant doing so without her by my side. No, I didn't mean that. You don't understand. I love you, and I don't want him. Bob, you have to give me an opportunity to explain. Don't deceive me, you traitor. I heard what you said on that recording, and the idea of him in our bed is unbearable. I'd never expected you to betray my love and cause me so much pain. If I'm mistaken, then look me in the eyes and tell me it's not true. Look at me and deny that you were thinking about his intimacy and your pleasure with him while we were making love. Yeah, that's right. You can't even look at me. You ruined everything, Laura. I hope you enjoyed his company, because you'll never have mine again. After I divorce you, you can go live with him, and then you won't have to fantasize about him anymore. Audibly sobbing and barely audible, she pleaded, "You can't divorce me. I love you. Please give me a chance to make this right." That's ironic. Now you seek my forgiveness? Imagine my surprise. The unfaithful wants a pardon, a one-time reconciliation. I'll make it up to you. I love you. I'm sorry. Where do you get the idea that I would want you after what you did? Do I appear to be the kind of man who would accept betrayal from a cheating wife? My voice quivered with a blend of emotions as I bared my soul to Laura. Over the past 3 days, I've been in turmoil. A part of me sought a way to forgive you and mend things. I thought I could move past the isolated mistake, but everything changed when I heard what you disclosed to our friends. The pain in my heart was tangible, and I couldn't conceal the anguish in my voice. The revelation that she had openly shared personal details about our intimacy shattered the last shreds of trust I held for her. Throughout our years together, I had never openly wept, but I couldn't contain my pain any longer. I felt humiliated, Laura. I continued, tears streaming down and my voice trembling. I continued, tears streaming down and my voice trembling. Those women, our friends, now perceive me as the oblivious husband. I even think I heard Mary call me a cuckold. Can you grasp the depth of humiliation? It's as if I've been living a lie, unaware of what was transpiring behind my back. The knowledge that they're ridiculing and labeling me as clueless obliterated any remaining self-esteem. As a result, they are no longer a part of my life. You've managed to terminate not only our marriage, but also our friendships. She visibly recoiled upon witnessing my tears and comprehended that she had wounded me beyond her understanding. I believe that in her heart, she never intended to harm me. But my tears made her realize the consequences of her selfish actions. She then experienced a profound sense of regret and sorrow, openly crying and attempting to console me. I distanced myself from her and took a deep breath, attempting to regain composure. I recognize that I may have been an oblivious husband in the past, but things have changed. I can't overlook what I've learned, and I refuse to be labeled as a cook, as your friends now mockingly refer to me. I won't subject myself to that kind of treatment again. As I spoke, the pain of betrayal resonated in my voice. I had desperately wanted to salvage our marriage and rediscover the love we once shared. However, the harsh reality of the situation was setting in, and I couldn't discern a clear path forward. During our return from the fishing trip, I contemplated how to repair our marriage, I confessed, my voice breaking. But the truth is, I couldn't find a solution. So I've made the decision to leave it in your hands. I don't know if I can ever trust you again, and I don't want to endure a life filled with uncertainty and pain. As I concluded, a prolonged silence hung in the air, laden with the weight of our emotions. The future was uncertain, and I couldn't foresee what lay ahead for us. Yet one thing remained evident. I couldn't bear to exist in a marriage tainted by betrayal and doubt. What do you mean you're leaving the decision to me? Well, since I couldn't determine our fate, I had a plan. I intended to share a story about an affair and let your response guide our path forward. The brilliance of my plan was that you alone would determine the destiny of our marriage. In the story I recounted 20 minutes ago, I never admitted to having an affair, merely alluded to its existence. I echoed your words about fantasizing about him while I devoted all my love to you. 20 minutes ago, I explained that the affair was a one-time mistake, purely physical and not rooted in love. I suggested finding a way to move past it, even offering to attend counseling. Do you recall your response? You told me to leave our home, threatened to ruin me in a divorce, take away my business, and reduce me to a pool boy. You showed no mercy. Now that's exactly what you can expect from me. I won't kick you out, but you'll move into the guest room. I'll consult with an attorney and file for divorce on grounds of adultery, utilizing the new law you mentioned with all the bitterness you displayed. Bob, I didn't mean any of that. You have to believe me. Please reconsider. What about our 20 years together and the kids? My voice conveyed raw emotion as I confronted Laura, my heart shattering with each word. The pain of betrayal weighed heavily, impacting not only me but our entire family. I know this won't be easy, I stated, my voice filled with hurt and anger. But I can't overlook your actions, Laura. You didn't think about our kids or our shared history when you chose to betray us. The sense of betrayal ran deep, the pain overwhelming. The trust that once bound us was shattered, and finding a way forward seemed impossible. What you did is unforgivable. I continued, my voice resolute. You'll have to face the consequences just as you were so eager to impose punishment on me. Now move your belongings out of our bedroom." My voice resonated with grief as I guided her away, physically severing her from the space we had once shared. The room that had served as a haven for our love was now tainted by the betrayal that had unfolded. That night sleep eluded me as I grieved the demise of my marriage. I had given her my whole heart, and the realization that she had been fantasizing about another man during our most intimate moments continued to engulf me like a looming shadow. While I acknowledged that some men might find it in themselves to forgive such transgressions, I couldn't muster the strength to do so. The pain was too profound, and the shattered trust felt beyond repair. Despite my enduring love for her, I couldn't find a way to move past her words. The dream of a shared future lay shattered, and the loss was immeasurable. All I could do was respect my own feelings and emotions, even if it meant releasing the woman I had once loved so profoundly. Before parting ways, I looked down at the woman who had been my love for the past 2 decades and uttered, "You've broken my heart. Today, I lost someone who didn't value me. But today, you lost someone who would have done anything for you." The echoes of pleas for forgiveness trailed behind me as I walked away from Laura for the final time. Bob had the difficult task of informing his children about some devastating news, and it was an emotionally charged moment. While his son Michael provided understanding and unwavering support, Katie's reaction was heart-wrenching. Her anger, stemming from a strong bond with her mother, was particularly painful for Bob. Despite his efforts to bridge the gap, the distance between them seemed insurmountable. In a surprising show of strength, Laura took it upon herself to address Katie, acknowledging her own serious mistake and advising her not to harbor too much resentment toward her father, who had done nothing wrong. The fallout had a lasting impact on the children's lives, but Bob was committed to ensuring their future by promising to fund their college education and take care of them. The confrontation between the husbands and wives was filled with betrayal and heartbreak. Mary, upon learning about Laura's divorce, felt her heart breaking as their long friendship seemed to crumble. Roger, furious and unable to understand why his wife had kept the affair a secret and seemingly encouraged it, was deeply hurt by the revelation on the recording. The emotional toll was too significant to ignore, and the once strong bond between them appeared irreparably damaged. The days that followed were marked by intense emotions and heartache as the consequences of their actions unfolded. The close group of friends now faced the harsh reality of betrayal and shattered trust. Mary, devastated by the news of Laura's divorce, was confronted by her husband, Roger, about her role in keeping the affair a secret. Her heart sank as she grasped the gravity of her actions. Roger's palpable anger demanded answers regarding why she had protected Laura and betrayed their best friend. The weight of her guilt and the realization of her complicity left her without words, consumed by remorse. In Scott's residence, a similar scenario unfolded as Emily listened to the hurtful words she had uttered about her husband on the recording. The embarrassment and shame proved too overwhelming for Scott, leading him to make the agonizing decision to depart, leaving Emily in a state of tears and remorse. Meanwhile, over at Bob and Laura's dwelling, tension hung heavily in the air as Bob handed Laura the divorce papers. Laura implored him to forgive her, recognizing the gravity of her mistake and the pain she had inflicted. However, her pleas went unheard as Bob's heart was too wounded to entertain the possibility of reconciliation. The hurt ran deep, and he understood that trust could never be rebuilt. Judge Montracer presided over our case, and the divorce proceedings evolved into a painful ordeal, with Laura desperately attempting to salvage the marriage. The courtroom battle brought forth Stan's testimony, laden with regret for the havoc he had caused. Stan was compelled to testify truthfully or face the fury of the angered husbands. Unfortunately, his testimony sounded more like an admission of guilt, filled with heavy remorse and an apology to the aggrieved parties. The courtroom witnessed tears as the final blow to the marriage was dealt. Laura's heart sank further as she re-experienced the affair through the playback of the recording. The judge swiftly rendered a decision, awarding Bob a significant portion of their assets and banning any spousal support under the new state strategy recently implemented. Laura grappled with the painful realization that her own actions had led to the downfall of her marriage. The excitement and passion she once shared with Stena felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the remorse and anguish she had caused Bob. The bright future they had envisioned together had crumbled, leaving Laura to bear the weight and consequences of her affair. Confronting the grim reality, she recognized that she had not only lost her marriage, but also her sense of security and the cherished life she had known. The aftermath of their choices had permanently altered the lives of these friends, leaving behind a trail of heartbreak, remorse, and shattered trust. The repercussions of their decisions continued to shape their futures as they grappled with the pain of their past mistakes and sought a path forward. Despite Bob's lingering love, he generously offered Laura their guest room until she could secure her own place and plan her future. The home was spacious enough for them to coexist with minimal interaction. Bob, working longer hours to maintain his sanity, arrived home late to avoid encountering her. Laura made ongoing efforts to win back Bob's affection, but he remained resolute in his decision to never reunite with her. Instead, he began dating Becky, his secretary, who eagerly embraced the opportunity to make him happy. Recognizing Bob as a valuable catch, despite their age difference, Becky was content in bed and relished the satisfaction he provided. She couldn't fathom Laura's foolishness and considered herself fortunate not to give Bob any reason to doubt her love. The emotional turmoil of the past 2 months weighed heavily on Laura. Witnessing Becky move in with Bob, occupying the space that was once theirs, served as a constant reminder of the life she had forfeited. The sight of her ex-husband and the woman now taking her place, sharing happiness and affection, tore at Laura's heart. Each glance, every touch, and every shared moment between Bob and Becky seemed to pierce Laura's heart like a knife. Jealousy consumed her, and a profound sense of remorse overwhelmed her for the choices that led to this situation. What was once a happy home for her was now a constant source of pain and sorrow, filled with love between Bob and another woman. The bed that Laura and Bob had once shared, where they had slept side by side, now became the backdrop for Bob's intimacy with Becky. The idea of them together in that very spot crushed Laura's soul, serving as a harsh reminder of her own selfishness that led to losing her husband. Alone and frightened, Laura struggled to navigate the emotional abyss she found herself in, with an uncertain and daunting future ahead, compounded by the fear of solitude and the consequences of her actions. With limited job prospects and feeling isolated, Laura reluctantly accepted her current living arrangements, acknowledging the loss of the man she once cherished. Confronting the reality of her situation, Laura knew she had to come to terms with her past mistakes and embark on the painful journey of rebuilding her life. Despite the challenges, she hoped to find inner strength and resilience to move forward, with the ultimate goal of rediscovering peace and happiness, even if it meant letting go of the man she once believed would be with her forever. Meanwhile, at Bob's office, when coworkers discovered that Stan was responsible for Bob's divorce, they treated him like an outcast. Social interactions dwindled, and Stan found himself ostracized for his actions. Realizing he couldn't endure the misery, disruptions, and financial losses caused by his colleagues, Stan opted to start his own business, taking several accounts with him. Unaware of the non-compete contract he was under, Stan continued to expand his business. Bob's attorney advised patience, suggesting they wait a few months before presenting a proper case against Stan's breach of contract. 10 months later, Stan had accumulated over 100 accounts, and his business was thriving at an impressive rate. He felt elated, reveling in the success he had diligently worked towards. However, this jubilation was short-lived when a devastating lawsuit was filed against Stan by the attorney, demanding a staggering $1 million. The claim accused him not only of causing significant financial loss, but also of breaching the ironclad non-compete contract. As the legal battle unfolded, Bob, still healing from the wounds inflicted by Stan's actions, was driven by a burning desire for revenge. Money was of minimal concern. He longed to make Stan pay for the pain of stealing his beloved wife, destroying his aunt's marriage, and ruthlessly poaching his loyal customers. When the dust finally settled, the outcome was catastrophic for Stan. Bob emerged victorious, taking ownership of Stan's once thriving business and leaving him with no option but to file for personal bankruptcy. The dream career he had built, with the prospect of owning a portion of Bob's company, a multi-million-dollar enterprise, crumbled before his eyes, leaving him destitute and emotionally shattered. Without a formal education to fall back on, Stan had no choice but to resort to grueling day labor just to scrape by and make ends meet. The severe consequences of his actions had taken a toll on him, and he learned a painful lesson that would haunt him forever: never again to interfere with another man's wife or betray trust so callously. Scott and Roger's wives recognized the peril they narrowly avoided, mirroring Laura's situation. It served as a wake-up call for them, emphasizing the importance of their husband's forgiveness and the necessity to respect and cherish their relationships. They committed to rebuilding trust and communication over time, avoiding similar mistakes in the future. Eventually, they succeeded in strengthening their marriages, moving forward with a newfound appreciation for their partner's love and forgiveness. They distanced themselves from Laura and Bob, reminiscing about the good times they once shared. Laura's life took a somber turn as she navigated the aftermath of her failed marriage. With a heavy heart, she acknowledged that Bob would never take her back. Securing a job as a receptionist at a dental office provided some stability, but it couldn't fill the void left by the loss of her once happy marriage. Residing in a compact apartment, she confronted the daily burden of loneliness and remorse. Striving to move forward, she entered into a relationship with an older colleague, attempting to find solace, yet the newfound connection could never rival the love she had shared with Bob. The joy that was once a part of her life had now become a distant recollection, and the pain of her past decisions seemed to linger with each step she took. During moments of solitude, she pondered what might have been, yearning for different choices that would have preserved the life she once had with Bob. Nonetheless, she had to accept the reality that she had relinquished something unique and irreplaceable. The promising future that had once shone brightly had now faded into a mere semblance of its former self, leaving her with a profound sadness and a deep yearning for what was lost. While Bob did feel the absence of Laura, Becky swiftly filled that void and dedicated herself to being the ideal partner. Bob appreciated the vitality and passion of the young woman, and a year later they tied the knot. A year after that, Michael and Katie welcomed a half-brother into the family.